Hello and welcome to the third episode of this devlog. My name is Marvin and today I'll show you how my inventory system looks like, how it works and what my problems were when setting it up. I also have chapters in place, so if you're interested in a specific part of the inventory you can skip right ahead. But let's start with a quick demo. So if I press I on my keyboard, the inventory appears. We have tabs for the different item types that I plan to have in the game later on. But let's pick up some items first. So we have a beer and a key for now. And you can see that they appear in this list on the left hand side. And if I hover over one of those items, I get more info about it. So the item sprite right here and the item description. And if I hover over the other one, to show you that the filtering works, the beer is a consumable, so that makes sense, and the key is a key item, so that works too. And if we right click an item, a dropdown appears and we can either use or drop it. So let's use the item. It disappears, but it's not consumed yet, because right now, when we have the inventory open, the game is paused. So once we close the inventory, the item gets consumed, and we get this text message, item consumed. But the connection between the inventory and the player is in place too. So it's not just the text plopping up, but the player's stats are affected by consuming the item for real. In this case, it adds 10 HP, if I'm correct. So yeah, setting up this inventory system took quite a while. It was a bit tricky. So let me show you how I implemented it. Okay, so let's start with the structure of the inventory. Here you can see my inventory scene, and we have a tab container node. So this is the actual inventory UI holding the different tabs. And here you can see them. They are all HBox containers because every tab within a tab container node has to be yet another container. And if we open this up, it's split in two containers again. We have the panel container on the left. So this is the item list container, you name it. Where we have a scroll container, and within the scroll container we have a VBox container. And the items that you saw on this list previously, those are menu buttons, because you can click them so that you have a drop-down menu. And those menu buttons are put into this VBox container. But it's empty right now because they are added dynamically. I'll show you how this works if we go over the code. And since we have a scroll container, we can scroll through the items if we have a lot of them. So that's this part. And then we have the inspection panel. And the inspection panel is a panel container too. As you can see, type panel container. I just named it inspection panel so that I'm not confusing those two. And it's split in two parts as well. We have a aspect ratio container, this one, and within this we have a texture rect. I use the aspect ratio container so that the image doesn't get stretched, because you can see this is a square right here. If it would be a normal container, it could stretch the sprite. I didn't want that. And then we have another panel container here, which holds a text edit node for the item description. Yeah, and that's the same for every tab. Okay, so let's have a look at the code. This here is the inventory script. Not a lot going on, but you can see that in the onReady function, we set the inventory UI to the global script. And this global script is a Autoload singleton. It's very useful. I advise you to look it up if you don't know it yet. Basically, the item, or this global script in general, you can access those methods and this script in general from every scene globally. For example, in the abstract item, I showed you in the last episode that we do the add item. Like we invoke the add item method of the global script, which is this method. And within this method, we invoke the add item method of the inventory UI. So basically, this global script connects the item to the inventory. And it makes total sense because an item and an inventory are two vastly different concepts. So they don't have to know about their existence. Or I think the player is a better example. Like the player and the inventory, two very different things. So yeah, this global script is like a bridge so that they can communicate in some way. Yup, and I showed you the inventory script. This add item method gets invoked. And we have the item manager, which basically is the script of the tab container. And this is where all the magic happens, basically. So let's get into it. We have a lot of code, as you can see. But I'll break it down for you. So the first part is about, or is the code for handling new items that gets passed into the inventory. Then we have this code that handles the item hover. So if we hover over a menu button, the inspection panels should get updated. Then we have this code for sorting the items if we select a different tab. And then this code that gets or handles the different actions that we can perform on an item. For example, we can use or drop an item, and this code handles it. Yeah, I'll go over all of this code. Remember that this video has chapters and you can skip through. Okay, so the add item method is the entry point for the item. So this is where the item gets passed to the inventory. And we go right into the add menu button method, where we first get the menu button container, which is the VBox container that I talked about earlier. This is where we want to put the new menu buttons. And then we have the item map. This is the bread and butter of the inventory. And every item that we have is stored in this map together with a menu button. So an item is always mapped to a menu button so that we can click it. And with this method, get item if present, we check whether we already have that item in our inventory. For example, if we pick up a beer and after that we pick up another beer, we want to check if this type of item, so the beer, already exists in our item map. So we see if the item name matches the item name of the new item matches the item name of any entry in the item map. And if so, we return this entry. And if not, we return null. And the result is stored in this retrieved item. And if it's not null, so for example, if we already have this item, then we increase the stack count by 1, as you can see. Because every abstract item has the item stats node. Let's look at it. And it also has a stacks variable. So we do this, and then we update the button. Because since we already have this button, there has to exist a menu button already. So we update the button. And what happens is, if the item stacks are greater than 0, then we change the text of the menu button, because we want the item name followed by the stack count in brackets. And if not, this may be a bit odd, because we delete a menu button and the item from the item map if the stacks are 0. Because we use this update method button if we consume an item fully too. We'll see that later. But yeah, so if we have this item already, we increase the stacks and update the button so that we see that we have more than one of those items. Otherwise, we create a new button. So we pass the item and the menu button container, and we create a new entry in the item map with this object. We have, or a dictionary, I should say. So we put the menu button property, and we create a new button within this method. As you can see, this is this one. We create a new button, set the button text to the item name, and we add button options. In this case, I set use and drop. So those are the options that you get when you right-click the item. And I set use and drop for every item, because I assume that you can use and drop every item. Depending on the item types, I will also add different options. So for example, if I don't know, item type is a weapon, you can throw it, whatever. And this line is for connecting the button to the pop-up, so that when we press the pop-up, we know which button was pressed, and therefore we know which item has to be handled. That's the point of this here. And then we return the button. So we have the button with the proper options. And then we connect the most entered with this button, which makes sense, because when we have the mouse entered event, we want to know which button we are hovering over, so that we can adjust the inspection panel properly with the right item data. And this one, mouse button mask right, we do this so that we have to right click an item to show those options. Because I think the default setting is that you can also left click an item, but I didn't want that, so you have to right click. So return the new button, and then the new entry is complete. And after that, because now the item and the menu button only exist in this item map, but we also want it in the inventory UI itself. This is why we selected the container here at the beginning, so we know it's this container, and we add another child to this container, which is the menu button. And that's how I add new items into the inventory. Okay, let's talk about how the item hover works. This method is invoked every time we hover over a menu button or one of our menu buttons, because we made the connection right here. And we get the button that we hovered over. But we need to know which item we hovered over, not only which button we hovered over. And as I said, the connection between the items and the buttons is made in the item map, the dictionary. So get item by button iterates through the item map, and if the past button matches any button from this map, then it gets returned, and we have the item that we hovered over. And it will always return a button, or it should always return a button. And then we invoke the update inspection panel method, which is this one, so that the new item info gets loaded into the inspection panel. So first we get the texture node, the description node. So basically this is the texture rect and the text edit, as we can see here. And we also get the new texture. So I can show the abstract item. Every abstract item has a sprite 2D, which we want to display. Therefore, we do item.getNode, sprite 2D, and the texture. And yeah, for the texture node, we set the texture to the new texture and the text to the item description. So that's pretty straightforward. Okay, let's look at the item sorting. If we click a tab, this item is executed or invoked, the build filtered item list method. And we pass this property, filter for item type. And every tab node has this property, filter for item type. It's an exported variable. It's an ID, basically, as you can see. And based on this ID, I use a different menu button container. Because if you remember, we have a lot of tabs, and we need to know which VBox container we should use to put our menu buttons into. So if the ID is 0, we take the VBox container of the consumables, and so on. And then we just fill the menu button container with buttons. Okay, let's have a look how item actions are handled. Every time a pop-up menu is pressed, so a pop-up menu is the drop-down that appears when we right-click an item. So every time we click on this pop-up menu, for example, use or drop, this method is invoked. And the first thing we have to care about is which item did we click, because we only have the button. So we know which button is pressed, and we pass this button to the getItemByButton method. And we iterate through the item map once again and see which button or which item map entry matches the button, or which menu button of an entry matches the button. And then we return the whole item map entry. So we now know which item was clicked. Then we determine which option was selected. And the ID of the pop-up menu is compared to an enum that we have here. So use is 0, drop is 1, and it's the same way in the pop-up menu. So if we drop an item, we want to remove it from the inventory. So we decrease the stacks by 1 and invoke the update button method. You know it from before. We also invoke this method when we create a new item. Not create a new item. When we receive an item that's already in the inventory. And then we show the message that an item is consumed. That's not quite right. This line should be in this method, preferably. So yeah, that's not correct. And if we use an item, we invoke the let the player consume item method of the global script. Where is it? Let the player consume item, and we literally let the player consume the item. And that's it. That's the whole. Oh no, I forgot about empty the inspection panel. What we do is we take all the nodes of the inspection panel and set them to empty strings or straight up null. And that's it. Okay, so that's it for my inventory system. I hope that it made somewhat sense. In case you have any questions, just post them in the comments. And if you're interested how consuming the item works on the player side, let me know. Maybe I'll do a separate episode on that. Anyway, thanks for tuning in and see you in the next episode.